we're going to talk about foundations. Earlier in the day, I mentioned the 3 things that I truly believe are the foundations of my marketing success. Now, I started all of these right out of the gate, but I improved them, I think, over time. Displays, and they're not in order. I think they all go hand in hand. So displays, which means getting your work out there, letting people see you, keeping in touch, which would be through newsletters, social media, e-blast, and then of course a referral program, which is nothing more than saying thank you to people that send you. This combination is a powerhouse for growing your business. So it's a matter of how do we get these out here. Now, we're going to start with displays and community exposure. How do you get up your first display? That's always a question. I'm going to go back in history. My first display, when I moved to Colorado 20 years ago, remember, I was pregnant with my 10th child within 4 years, so that's a lot of kids. I didn't have a lot of money. I had a lot more time. You can imagine having, at that time, 6 boys. I spent a lot of time in consignment shops and resale shops and things like that. And my first display actually was a consignment store. She was a very nice lady, and she helped me with all my kids and keeping them clothed. And she allowed me to put 3 images up in her consignment store. Now remember, back when I moved to Colorado, my prices were probably right in line with a consignment store. And so, you know, we put up this display, and she did, in fact, help me grow my business. Now, over time, my prices changed. I loved her so much, I didn't have the heart to take down those images because one of them included her own daughters. But there was this transition where people started calling from the consignment store, and we would quote our prices, and they were horrified because there was just this huge discrepancy. So eventually, you know, we started looking at other avenues. But I did, at least right out of the gate, understand the value of working in a networking relationship. Now, there are lots of different displays that you can put up. There are a million ways to get your look up there. I'm super adamant about size, and we'll talk about that later on how to do this. But to give you kind of an idea, we try to stay on the cutting edge of everything. We have displays like lit prints, these LumaViews, where every window in our building radiates a glowing image. These are the images that you'll see us on tour with. These are images like, we do a lot of auctions and charitable resources. And let me tell you, you know when you go to an auction and there's 15 other photographers there, when you put out something like this on an easel and your print is literally glowing and people are walking, you've got 30 people going, how do they do that? Now the question is always, do we sell these? We've sold a couple, but frankly they're not archival, and we tell our clients that this is more of a consumer product, but we can sell them. But man, they stop people in their tracks. So you know, you have to find balance between what is sellable and what is powerful as well. So these are a wonderful resource. My goal with displays is to get my work up everywhere I can, and that's the key. When people can come to you, and I even can tell you the year I really feel like this happened, where the first client that came to me and said, oh my gosh, I see your work everywhere, I realized I had made it. We had literally put ourselves in every location that we possibly could. As far as acquiring these locations, that's of course the challenge. People always want to know, how do you start out? Well, I'm going to give you some history here. Hospital displays. My first hospital display actually came out of a session that I did. I photographed a husband and a wife who happened to be a doctor and a nurse. And they worked at a local hospital together. And out of the blue, I got a call from the marketing director. And the marketing director said, she said, I've seen your work is beautiful. We would love to put your work in the hospital. And she said, but we have 2 problems. So after a long conversation, she says 2 problems. And I said, all right, what are the problems? And she said, first of all, we are 3 months away from opening, and we need to have all of these images up in 3 months, which happened to be December. Now, I make half of the money I make in my studio is made basically September, October, November is where I make half of the income that I make. So to have somebody telling me in September that they need, you know, these prints up by December was pretty frightening to me. She said, we need this whole display up. And the second problem she said, well, unfortunately, our budget is only $10,000. So of course, I'm sitting there listening on the phone, and I'm going to be very honest with all of you. To this day, every display you'll ever see me put up, every single one, I donated those images to that display. However, in her case, you know, she comes to me with this problem. She has this budget. Now, what happens, honestly, if you don't use your budget? What do? They take it away, right? You shrink your budget. So I did the only thing I thought was right and helped her by accepting her $10,000. And I said, all right, I'll find a way to make that, I'll find a way to make that work. And so that is in fact the only display that I've ever been paid to put up, which it was great because $10,000 was a lot of money for something I would have done for free. I was helping her, don't forget that. I was doing her a favor. So we set out to do this. Now, the other thing I need you to know about this display is the original display, when it went up, I had to use current clients' images. I had less than 3 months to transition into getting images printed and on walls. The smallest images that ever go up are 30 inches. We do not put anything on our walls less than that. So these are 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70-inch portraits. So these are big guys. Now, in this case, I had to use current clients' images. And so I went through my work and picked my favorites. And I would contact those people and I would give them a $200 credit as a thank you for allowing us to put them up. They did have to sign a legal document for specific use. They also were told that the hospital owned the images. We had no rights to them. They could not have them later, et cetera. So that was great. And we had no problems. Clients, of course, were thrilled to do this. I always get asked, how do people find you? Every single image that is in any display is hand-signed by me. It carries my name, Sandy Putsch, and every third image has a little plaque on it, a little silver plaque that has the studio name and phone number. So it's not obtrusive, it's not a big marketing campaign. We're not trying to put it out there as a big marketing campaign. Really and truly, we're donating art, and that's really important for you to remember. I'm not going to give all the keywords because there are hundreds of you out there, and I don't want you to flood the hospitals right now, but if you just listen to what I said, when you donate art, it makes a difference. So this is how we go. Now, every display since then has been a little different because the first display I got up, of course, it was like 60 or 70 prints. They were huge. We had to kill ourselves to make it happen. We put that display up, and honestly, almost overnight, we were getting phone calls. Now, the next question I always get is, well, how do they find you? One of the things I will tell you is that you should never look at this as a what's in it for me attitude, because if you do, they'll see right through. If you walk in and say, I want to put pictures all over your hospital, they're not going to do it. If you say, I want to donate art that has a substantial value, I'm giving you a lot there, it makes a big difference. Now, on the other side of it, we also don't go into a hospital and say, and can you stick these in everybody's bags? Because when you do that, you become an annoyance to them. Then they realize, okay, that wasn't a donation, you're just feeding yourself. So we don't. We put our plaques up. They're very tiny. They're very small. They're not obtrusive. And guess what happens? We put them up, and then within days, the nurses are calling us saying, do you have a postcard or something we can give people? Because seriously, if I have to look up your name one more time, I'm going to quit my job. So that helps. Now, the other thing that's important to remember is, other than that first display, every single display I've ever done, the people in the display have something to do with the location. So in our hospital displays, every single person in that image is either a doctor or a nurse or a grandbaby of a doctor or a nurse. We work with the hospitals, and they actually they send out a mass email to their employees saying, we're looking for moms and dads with babies under the age of 1. If you're interested, you get the free session, you get the free credit, which we've talked all about, and you know how that works, and we get more than enough people. Now, the process takes 6 to 8 months to get a display up, but you have to understand what's really happening. We are creating powerful buzz. If you imagine any display in a hospital and every single person in there is a nurse or a doctor, you know that when a nurse is tooling down the road, where's she going to take her patients? She's going to say something. And when somebody's delivering a baby and there are 3 beautiful prints in that room, and a mom looks up and goes, oh my gosh, those are beautiful, and you have 3 nurses in the room saying, oh, we love these photographers. They photographed all of us. They're wonderful. We control the buzz. If we just slap pictures on the walls, first, there's always a little bit of a yay, that's exciting, but it becomes like wallpaper. People forget about them, they don't see them. So we have to attach actual people to them. That is why every 2 to 3 years we replace the entire display. And yes, it is an expense, but understand, we regenerate that buzz. We get people going again so that all those nurses and doctors are pro us, and they're out there pushing for us, and we're not, and they're asking us to provide the marketing information. So that's really important. My first display that went up, that first one, it went up and we started getting phone calls. Well, I'll never forget one of the very first phone calls, very first sessions. Every client that walks in my door, every single one, I will ask them, how did you hear about us, if it's their first time? So I get all kinds of answers, but one day this beautiful woman came in. I'll never forget her because she was very petite. I'm taller, but she was petite, and the tiniest little baby you've ever seen comes into to my studio, and she was sitting down and we were prepping up, which we'll show you later how we do that. But I turned to her and I just casually said, how did you hear about us? And she said, actually, Sandy, I had my baby at PSL and I saw your work there. Well, this was within a few weeks of it going up. So of course my heart starts racing, thinking it's working. And I turned to her and I said, oh, great. I said, what did you think of the display? And she said, let me tell you a story. She said, when I had my baby, I have to tell you, this was the single most horrific experience of my life. She said, I did 18 hours of hard labor at home before they would admit me in the hospital. And when they finally admitted me, I did a full 24 hours of labor. They were having problems. Eventually the baby started to stress and I had to go in for an emergency C-section. And she said it was the most painful, difficult, awful experience of my life. And she said this will probably be the only baby that I ever have because of that experience. And she said, but when I was there, when I was at the hospital, she said, and I was hooked up to this IV, and she's literally physically showing me this. She's like, I was hooked up to this IV, and I was so much pain, and I was trying to walk it off, and I was walking down that hallway, and this happens to be a circular hallway. She said, I was taking that circle, and every few feet, I would stop, and I would just stare at your pictures. Sorry, hang on. Dang it. I got a remed. She said, I would just stop, and I would stare at your pictures. And all I kept focusing on were those babies, and that I wanted a healthy baby, and that no matter what, I was going to leave with a healthy baby. And she said, you literally got me through that experience. And she said, there was a point that I turned to my husband, and I said, if I survive this, you are buying me one of those. I was like, oh my God. Seriously, that is a true story. I was like, okay, I got it. But it was the coolest moment in my life because it just totally stunned me. I just imagine women threatening their husbands going, I'm getting this. And they're kind of in a weak point there where they can't really argue so much. So it was really a power moment for me. However, at that moment, when I realized that this was the coolest thing ever, that having my work up on this imagine these are emotionally affected people. They're in the most painful, exciting point in their life, and they're making decisions, and you're now visual to them. So of course, I immediately got the concept. And I told you, I'm an all or nothing panicker. So when I saw this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing in the whole world. I have to have, every hospital in the world has to have my work. All of them are mine. So of course, that was my initial approach. Then I kind of scaled back and thought, okay, maybe just Colorado. Maybe if I could just take over my community, that's a little less, so you guys still have some room out there to grow. So I did exactly that. I went after every hospital, and at this point, there's virtually almost no hospital you can go to that's a public or private hospital at this point that does not have our work. Now, each of these displays has anywhere from 60 to 90 images. We have hospitals that we have 3 or 4 floors of work, 60 to 90 images per floor. Now, for everybody out in the audience who's having a heart attack and panicking, I want to take you all the way back to my first display. Because you can't sit there and go, I can't do that, 90 images, I couldn't afford that. Because remember, my first display, 3 images in a consignment store. I couldn't even afford to change them if I wanted to at that time. It's about pieces, it's about segments, it's about understanding that you grow. I say this, never say no, don't say I can't do that, say, you know what, I can't do that, but I can do 3 images. So if you can get in a doctor's office and you can put up 3 images, then as soon as those 3 images pay for themselves, you get 3 clients that make enough money, go get 3 more images and ask for another wall. Because a display is like real estate. When you get your image on the wall, it does not come down. You own that spot. And we are mighty territorial about our spots. We put our stuff everywhere so that nobody else can. And I know that sounds terrible, but it's marketing and it's an effect, and we have to be out there to do that. So think about it like real estate. Don't get overwhelmed with where we are. I'm also 24 years ahead of most of the people that are listening. So I didn't get there overnight, but I did get there. And you guys have to decide. Maybe you don't even want that kind of business. It might be a smaller display in a local doctor's office. But the important thing is get your work out there. Just as a side note, we're always looking for fun, creative ways to improve our hospital displays. The first displays that ever went up, I was teaching Bellies and Babies, which was the tour in 2008. And we're about to segment into that where it was the Madonna portrait, mother, baby, the 5 poses in 20 minutes. So that's what the displays look like. But now my work is so different. It's vibrant and bright and colorful. And so we get offers or contacts all the time from hospitals that want to, it's kind of a one-up, they want to do something better than somebody else. So we had a call a few years ago, or not even quite then, from one of the hospitals that wanted to redo their display, and they told me that they had this Winnie the Pooh kind of feeling. They wanted it to be Winnie the Pooh-ish, and they wanted babies doing things like swimming and climbing trees, and they're describing this. In my head, I'm going, okay, well, the first thing I know is I can't use Winnie the Pooh because it's copyrighted. So, but at least I knew the concept was the pastel-y, sort of soft look. The second piece, I didn't know a lot of one-year-olds that could actually climb trees, swim, or catch butterflies. So in my head, I'm trying to do the math, and of course, just like always, she's like, oh, and then my favorite was, she said, and we want it to be like one mural. We want like a 10-foot mural. Can you do that? And I said, oh yeah, no problem. That would be beautiful. In my head, I'm going, I have no idea. Where do you get a 10-foot portrait, honestly? And so I was having little panic attacks, but I never say no, ever, if I can help it. And so, in my head, I was visualizing this. I knew it had to be a digital composite. So this is just to kind of show you how these babies were captured. Very simple, clean, white background. In fact, I know so much more about digital capture now. I would have done something else, a green screen, blue screen, anything else but white to separate those babies. But you can kind of see how we got them interacting and catching. We had bells and bubbles and things to get them in chairs and bathtubs to get those shots. This picture does not do it a lot of justice, but you have to imagine this is an entire wall mural. This is what came out of that. So this is the actual birthplace wall. Now, I wish you could see it in real life because it is just the most, this is not my style of photography, honestly. It's not something I would have ever thought of, but it was a showstopper. And what was really cool is the hospital loved it so much that they made a bigger deal about it. They got the press, and they were reopening a wing, and they got the press in the TV stations and the radio stations, and I was invited there, and we got to do an unveiling of the, and it was something that was just sort of done on a whim, but it became something bigger than what I had expected. So sometimes putting yourself out there and trying a little bit harder has great results as well. Now, I do want to mention real quick, and then we'll go to a question. You asked, or nobody asked, but I had mentioned how do people at the hospital find you? When the hospital calls us and says, hey, can you give us a postcard or a business card or something like that? We have these cards that we do. I'm gonna read it to you. The front says, to be a child is to know the fun of living. To have a child is to know the beauty of life. But on the back, what I want you to key into is, congratulations, we know how special the arrival of your new baby is, and our caring staff is grateful that you've placed your faith in us during your delivery. So who is this card from? From the nurses and the doctors. We're not pushing anything. They're gifting to their clients a complimentary session. So it's a great way to do this, because that way we're not forcing them to do anything, and they're excited because they're in the pictures and they know who we are. So this is a great little series as well. And this one also can be found at You Can Do, and you guys are gonna get it in your packet today. It's in the baby kit, so you guys are all getting that as well, so enjoy that one. You had a question.
Yes, several people online, including Gail, are asking, so that first hospital display came from a client. Who do you contact at the hospital to pitch directly?
Oh, you guys are going to make me do it. You're going to make me give the big secret. Dang. All right, I'm going to give it away. How many people are online right now? I got to know how many people are going to be calling hospitals.
Many.
All right, I'm going to give the actual verbiage. I'm only going to give it once. So if you got a pencil, you better write it down. You guys are all going to get it later if you ask me. Here it comes. You ready for it? First of all, I don't make the phone call. You could have your friend, your neighbor, your mother, anybody who loves you and is proud of you to make this phone call, and this is what we do. You call the hospital, go for the marketing. Usually we ask for a marketing group, and whoever answers the phone, it doesn't matter, because this is what you're going to say, and I'm going to say it one time. The owner of the company that I work for would like to make a substantial donation of art to the hospital. Who do I speak to? Get it? Now, I'll explain it. There are two keys. Obviously, well, the number one thing is a substantial donation of art perks anyone's ears. So it doesn't matter who you speak to first, they're going to get you to the right person. Now, the same thing applies if I were to call a hospital and say, I want to put my pictures all over your wall, I'd get shut down in a heartbeat. That donation of art does it. Now, every once in a while, they'll say, oh, who's the owner of the company? And my staff will say, actually, I'm not allowed to say that over the phone. Which sounds so cool, doesn't it? It's totally not true. But we just try to, because we don't want to say who it is, because it may affect how they move that phone call along. So we don't tell them. And until we can go into an office and sit down and create a presentation and blow their minds with our work, we're not going to tell them who we are. So it does take a little bit of confidence and a little bit of courage, and you now have a big secret there. So I know people are on the phone calling hospitals right now going, the owner of it. But that's how we do it. It's how you feel about yourself. It's when you believe in yourself that you can make these things happen. There are people out there right now that are saying, there's no way that would work. Every single person that does it, it works for. or you find a way to make it work. Yes.
Do you have other locations besides hospitals?
We have locations anywhere you can go. Children's specialty stores, clothing stores, boutiques, baby gyms, every single place where a child, our demographic, where they shop, play, spend time, eat with their families, we're going to put displays up. We've actually had to pull back because we can't handle. I've actually scaled back to a more boutique, high-end, less employees, and so we've cut back a little bit, so there's a little room to grow in Colorado.
I was going to say, your signature too, is it a special, something very, you can see at Sandy Pooch, or do you?
You want to know the truth? I have a 9th grade education. I dropped out of school in 9th grade, so you're lucky you can read it, honestly. I write like this.
Oh, okay.
No, it's Sandy Pooch, but it's just my own personal signature, and it's not pretty. And I get very jealous looking at all of you photographers who have these gorgeous names, and I look like a 3-year-old scratching with my left hand. So now you know the truth. You can succeed, and you don't even have to go to 9th grade. I mean, come on. All right, now to finish up, doctor's offices. There's always a follow-up to everything we do. We're always going to capitalize on it and maximize it as much as possible. So, for instance, at a doctor's office, when we work with doctors and nurses, sometimes it's a smaller group, and everybody that works there might be older, grandma ages. We'll get their grandkids, and if not that, then we'll use their clients. We try to utilize somebody that would be there. One of the things we do is we will take 1 or 2 of those images, and we will steal one of their business cards, and we'll scan it and get their logo, and we show up with 500 appointment cards with the images that we created and our nice little logo on the back. And we gift them to the doctors. We're like, by the way, we love these images, made these for you, so feel free to use them. Well, guess what? 3 months later, they're calling you saying, how do we order 1,000 of those? And now you are giving a business card to every single person that's coming into that doctor's office. They're tying in your work to what they're seeing on the walls, and that's important too. So I'm hoping you guys are getting all these connective pieces if this is making sense to you. It's all about maximizing it. This is a mall display. This is another one that years ago I heard a photographer say to get a mall display, so I'm one of those that just does what I'm told sometimes. So I went out there, but the mall that I wanted to go to was it's Park Meadows Mall. It would be your exclusive mall. It's the Nordstroms and the Saks and all the expensive stores. So that's what I went for. Well, when I made an appointment and sat down with her name was Kim. I sat down with Kim to present. I showed her a beautiful slideshow, all put to music, and of course, I could see, I love watching people's eyes when they watch your work. You can almost figure out what kind of children they have, what ages and what sexes they have, because, every time little girls would come up, she'd go, oh. And I knew she had daughters before she'd said anything. So we finished the slideshow, and I turned to her and I said, you can see, I love what I do. I'm a storyteller. I like to capture and tell stories. I said, what I would love to do, your clientele is the clientele we work with, and I would love to have my images in your mall. And she just really emotionally was like, oh, we want to have you here. We would love to have you here. And so I said, well, first of all, do you have children? And she said, yeah, I have 2 daughters. And I said, oh my gosh, you know what we should do? We've got this special going on right now, and I'd love to give you a complimentary session. We could take your daughter out, and we could take both of them out in little white dresses and in a big field of flowers, barefoot. We could have them running little baskets of flowers. So I'm watching her face and starry-eyed, like mom going, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. So I know that we're doing the right things here. So we get that, and she's all excited about this. She's out in the field with me. We're running through the field together in this moment. And I turned to her and I said, so you can see how important this is. So can you tell me how much would it cost to get a kiosk? And she looked at me and she said, they're $8,000. And I literally thought she meant a year. And she said, no, it's $8,000 a month. I almost fell over dead. I literally I was sitting there like stuttering. I was like, wow, that was more than my rent at the time. And so I, of course, took a big gulp, and I said, there's just no way. I said, I couldn't do that. I said, do you have anything else? Do you have like a wall or anything that, where people go? And she's like, I don't think so. We can look around, but pretty much that's it. And so, of course, I was really disappointed. I mean, I was at the point towards the end. She kept saying, but we've got to find a way to get you here. And I'm like, what about the bathrooms? People go there. Could I just have the stalls? Like, just put my, she's like, are you serious? I said, will you let me? And the funny thing is, now they have advertisements in the bathroom. I wasn't that far off, but she, of course, that was not an option. So we ended that meeting, and I was certainly not going to get a display. And so I left, and I thought that was the end of it. But you know what? That slideshow, the starry-eyed little moment with the children in the field worked, because about a week later, she called me, and she said, Sandy, I cannot get your images out of my mind. I think you need to be here. I've gone to management, and I've went to bat for you. And I've got the display down to only $4,000 a month. And in my head, I'm going, awesome. I can't afford $4,000, but I'm like, I didn't want to be rude. I said, That's excellent. I said, but I'm so sorry it's still out of my budget. So of course now I feel dumb because I mean that's a lot of money to her and it was way more than I could handle, so we had to let it go. Well, guess what? A week later she called me back and she said, listen, this is it. She goes, I can't believe I'm calling you again, but I really, really, really want you here. And honestly, I found a wall that we can give you. It's $1,650 a month. It's only a 3-month lease, but that is as good as I can do. And I said, I'll take it. Now, $1,650 was more than I could have ever afforded, but I took a risk because it was a 3-month lease and it was right during the holidays. We were about to go into the holidays. So I thought, you know what, if I'm ever going to try this, this is the time. The display went up. This is the actual display when it went up. The cool thing was the lights were all there. It worked out really nicely. The bad thing is they would not let us put any advertisements up. This little tiny, you can't see, the little baby purple brochure sitting there was my only piece they allowed me to put out. The other brochures, not mine. We could put nothing out there. So the disadvantage is I couldn't really put anything out there other than my logo and my name and a tiny brochure. The advantage was that the ATM machine was right there. So that was, that was a good thing. And the other advantage was the stroller rental place was right there. So I at least thought, okay, there's moms that are going to be showing up here and they're going to walk by. Well, whenever I go to, whenever I create a display like this, I try to get to know the people that are there. So the night this went up, we had to put it in up after hours. The next morning, I showed up to take a look at it with the lights on. And of course, there were some ladies working back here. And I walked up and introduced myself and explained what this was. And they were very excited. They hadn't seen it before. And so we created a little relationship there and told them all about me and left. Well, a couple days later, I was kind of excited. I actually got a phone call, so I wanted to come check it out. And I got there and I realized all the little brochures were gone. And this was in 2 days. And this is 20 minutes from my house. So I walked over to the ladies and this time I brought a tin of cookies. We're known as the cookie people. We bake cookies we have a convection oven in our studio and we have hot cookies at all times, which I'll explain the marketing value there later, but I deliver cookies wherever I go. And so I took a tin of cookies to them and talked and I said, oh, well, I'm out of brochures, I'm gonna run and get some. And so I went outside to get them and I came back and one of the ladies said, you know what? Why don't you just bring a stack of brochures and we'll fill that for you? Because you cannot come every 2 or 3 days. And I was like, bonus, thank you so much. So of course, 2 days later, I bring another tin of cookies. I tell them thank you. I leave them a big box of brochures. So this became this little relationship. They would put out my brochures, and about every 3 to 4 weeks, I would bring a box of cookies and more brochures for them to put out. So this went on for the first 3 months. Now, this mall display was incredible. I could tell you all about the big sales that we got from it, but the bottom line is after 3 months I knew we were paying for itself, so we did negotiate and we were able to stay. So we ended up staying in this mall for a little over a year and a bit, and about a year and a half later Kim calls me and said, we are leasing out that space, are you ready for a kiosk? And I said, are they less than $8,000? And she said no. And so sadly, I had to go and take all of those down. Now that broke my heart. The last time I went and took my last box of cookies and said thank you to the ladies and finished it up. And I was just so brokenhearted because this really was an incredible display for us. And we had incredible sales from it, but that was the end I thought that was the end of that. 2 weeks later, Kim calls me. And she says, do you know what? The ladies from downstairs actually came upstairs and they said that people have been coming in asking about you all the time and we have got to get you back in the mall. Now, what I actually heard was the ladies downstairs aren't getting their supplies of cookies anymore and they're mad about it and they want to get you back in the mall. And so cookies work, by the way, absolutely. So I knew where it came from because the fact that they went upstairs, they took the time to go upstairs and go to bat for me was pretty incredible, but it had everything to do with that relationship I had created with them. If I had put those images up and walked away, I would be out of that mall. And so Kim came back and she said that she could negotiate a kiosk for $2,500 a month. That still was a lot, but I already knew that it had paid for itself. We had one of the first clients we got from the mall display spent $21,000 on their 8th child the first year we had it up. So they kind of sank the ship for us on that one. We didn't need any more clients, but I mean, and that's very rare, by the way. I want you to know that was the first time I'd ever crossed any margin like that. So, and that's not the norm, by the way, too, but it was very exciting. So this is kind of how those go. This is the kiosk. This is before we finished it, but what I wanted to show you, this is way back when. This was a TV screen. This is even before flat panel TVs, but we had to build a case around it. Note to self, if you put fans in the cabinets, you get to buy a whole lot less DVDs than I had to buy the first year, DVD players. Sorry. But you kind of learn and grow. But this is the kiosk that went up, and it stayed up for many, many years. We've since changed it, but these are the kind of things that I want you to see. That there was an investment. I actually had to build this and pay for it, but again, this was a great location. Now, to back it up a little bit, for those of you who are feeling a little overwhelmed, I have displays at other malls as well. I ask every audience, any of you have displays? I hear things like, I pay $100 a month, I pay nothing, it's free, they gave me a wall because they had a blank wall. I have mall displays that are as low as $300 a month. So you don't have to spend a ton of money, but the client that I get from these displays are very different. The one that's $300 a month, it's mainly high school seniors. So we have all high school senior market there. This one, totally different client base. So just start small and grow big. Okay, the next one, yes ma'am. I just won't look at her anymore.
So first of all, I just want to say that Fair Oaks in the chat room has said that you give her inspiration. She never finished 9th grade either, and it just goes to show you how you can do anything if you believe in yourself. So thank you. And have some questions?
Yeah. Gail is wondering, when you took them cookies, do the tins have your studio information on the tins?
We've done both. We've had customized tins, but honestly, for the investment, people eat them and throw them away. So it's just not one that we've seen a lot of response from, so we don't invest our money there anymore. That's a good question.
And another quick one, when you gift sessions, so we were talking earlier about if you go into a boutique and you gift a session to the owner, do you give them images and prints with that as the gift, or do you just chalk it up to
Typically,
marketing networking costs?
in a doctor's display, we have an entire program, which you guys are going to give one away in a minute if people are tweeting, and we're going to give one to one of you guys. But typically, it's a set program that the people in the office, like if the owners, the 3 doctors, we give them each a 16 by 20 and a complimentary family session that they can display, but they sign contracts. They actually have to commit to keeping it in their office for a minimum of 2 years. The images that go on the walls, we always get asked the question, do we sell them when we're done, when we're changing them out? There are 3 options. If we know the people and love them, we might they become good clients, we gift it to them. If we don't know who they are anymore, we put our number we put their name and number on the back of the print, so when we pop it out of the frame, we can call them and say, hey, we've got this, it's half off. Or if they're damaged, we just get rid of them. So yeah, so it's depending on the location. With a hospital, we give a single credit, like $100 to each person that comes in, where if it's more intimate, a doctor's office, we may give them an actual wall portrait. We don't give them a lot of small prints because we do want to sell them things. We only give them a 16 by 20 because we want to upsell them to a larger wall portrait, so we calculate these things pretty carefully. Does that work?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
And following on that, Elsa's wondering if you sign contracts as to how long they agree to hang it there.
Yes, ma'am. Hospitals are contracted for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, sometimes, either we are lax or they are lax. It's not a rush to get it down or changed, but we can come back and say, look, your contract's up. It's been 2.5 years. We let you keep it up a little while longer. We'd like to replace it. And they're excited to do that. So absolutely everything is contracted just because we want to make sure that we're controlling everything.